The first recorded instance of a protest at the Olympic Games was in 1968 when the USA athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised a fist on the podium during the medal ceremony of the men's 200 meters in Mexico. Though both men were seen as heroes in the eyes of many for their Black Power salute, they were immediately expelled from the Games by the International Olympic Committee. Since then, the International Olympic Committee created Rule 50 to ensure that history does not repeat itself. That Rule 50, advertising or other publicity shall be allowed in and above the stadia, venues and other competition areas which are considered as part of the Olympic sites. Commercial installations and advertising signs shall not be allowed in the stadia, venues or other sports grounds. No kind of demonstration or political, religious or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, venues or other areas. Now, the IOC's Rule 50 came under a lot of scrutiny, where many thought the rule was outdated and oppressing to various groups, as many areas of the world were in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, in 2022, the Commonwealth Games, which are set to be held from July the 28th to August the 8th, will allow protests from athletes on the podium. This was made possible through the Commonwealth Games Federation's athlete advocacy guiding principles, which will support athletes who choose to raise awareness on issues such as race, social injustice, and sexual orientation. This, of course, is in direct contrast to the IOC's Rule 50, which was put in place to protect the neutrality of sports and the Olympics. The Commonwealth Games Federation President, Dame Louise Martin, said it is the belief of the CGF that athlete advocacy and activism humanizes rather than politicizes sport. Now, how big of an impact will protests have if they are actually carried out at the Commonwealth Games, and is Rule 50 outdated? George and Mariah, serious decisions here made by the Commonwealth Games Federation, which will impact every highly opinionated athlete at the Commonwealth Games coming up in Birmingham this summer.
Yes, so a massive change, and of course, you know, change always creates a sort of mixed emotion, mixed feelings, a lot of pushback and whatnot. But I tend to believe, and this is like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, and I get the sense that it will be up to the athletes to ensure that they're very tolerant, and, you know, what they do on the podium would be very positive. And it's a trial, George and Lance. I know they've said that it's going to be like this moving forward. What I will say, though, is that, you know, they're trusting the athletes. They're giving them a lot of power. Now it's up to them to do the right thing and, you know, not go overboard. And, George, you know, when I was thinking about this topic, I remembered you on the show talking about, you know, everybody having a cause to represent, and I feel like I could have heard you saying things like that. Maybe I was just preempting what would have happened on the show and saying that, you know, people, so now if I have a cause that, okay, I want to celebrate my socks is red today, is it that I'm going to come on? So, you know, I can also see people using it and making a joke of it. That's why, you know, when I started my discussion, I spoke about great power, great responsibility, being mindful of, you know, those that are running the organization and everything.
You know me well. What do you think? I'm going to tell you what I think. I want to know what you think.
I am a little disturbed by it, to be honest. I know there's an element of freedom of expression that needs to be addressed, but opening the issue up in the way that the Commonwealth Games Federation has, to me, is fraught with danger, and I'm a little concerned about how some athletes will treat this issue, and I'm not sure about it at all. And I wonder what the IOC will have to say about it, because the IOC is the overall governing body for all sport. The Commonwealth Games Federation is by itself the governing body for Commonwealth sport. But I think this decision is fraught with some danger, and I'm a little concerned about how it will be addressed or how it will be used by the athletes who want to use it.
All right. So I think the decision is rubbish, flatly. I think it's stupid. I think it's a waste of time. I think its effectiveness is zero. Here's why. Well, I'll tell you one quick thing before I go and tell you that. So often in history, men and women who are part of organizations do things because they want to go down in history as he or she who was at the helm of the organization when it did this. Look, these days, everybody wants to be seen to be moving with the equality movement and moving with the movement that celebrates and lionizes freedom of speech. So, by virtue of doing this, the Commonwealth Games Federation has put themselves into those, or into that good book, or into those good books as, oh, you know, when so-and-so was a president, this is what happened, and this was a movement in support of equality. This was a movement in the way of celebrating freedom of speech and promoting it, and for that she is to be recognized, and the CGF, Commonwealth Games Federation, is to be applauded and congratulated. So they get that out of the decision, those who made it. Second thing, Lance raised a very important point about the IOC. Were the IOC to come now and say to them, no, rescind that rule, the IOC is now the bad guy. So the IOC can't, its hands are tied. It cannot speak out about, because then you're going to hear that the IOC is against free speech and against freedom of expression. But here's the substantive thing now. Listen, when Tommy Smith and John Carlos did what they did in 1968, the world clearly was not what it is now. Back then, there was no mass media platform where you could stay in Catadupa in St. James in Jamaica, or you could sail in Point 14 in Trinidad and Tobago and speak to the world. No, you can stay in those places. You can stay at the International Space Station and talk to Lance live on the SportsMax zone. You can be a guest with Mariah, and in case you missed it, from the International Space Station, and the world can join in the conversation. I'm saying to you that at that time, when the rule was a garrote around the throat of freedom of speech, of a human being wanting to speak freely, you could see the men saying, look, this is the platform we have. It will be reported in many newspapers and many newscasts around the world. Let us do it and hope it gets traction so the world can know that we're championing a cause. Now, you can speak to the world in 140 characters, in an Instagram post, in a Facebook post, or what they're changing it to Meta. You post on Meta, you post on Instagram, you post on Twitter, you post on any one of the various media sites. Nobody now wants to represent a view and doesn't have a platform to represent that view. I am very perturbed that the area of sport, which should celebrate athletic excellence, is now going to be hostage to all kinds of sloganeering and cause propagation and the willy-nilly approach to activism that this decision has now opened, and I think sport will be worse for it, because these days people don't lack fora to be able to have their voices heard, unlike in 1968 when there was nobody who could speak to the world directly without having to go through some intermediary and hoping some journalist publishes their story somewhere. So 1968 is not 2022. This is a foolish step.
So just yes or no, because I know we have to go. Will it take away from the games?
But of course, it has the potential to do tremendous damage to the games. We're going to be here talking about the protest that so-and-so did rather than collecting their bronze or gold medal.
But we don't have to.
But you know what we're going to have to? Because it will be what the idiots are talking about. So we're going to eventually have to address it because it's the nature of what we do. My goodness gracious me.
My goodness, we have to go to break.
Rubbish.